everyone, it's Olivia from Girlybunches, and in this week's video I'm going to be showing you how I went about making this slouchy bobble hat. And it's not going to be showing you how I make the whole hat. I'm going to be starting off showing you how to make a little one, because this is it will take too long to show you in a video. But I'm going to take you through the steps that I went through to make this hat, down to the brim, and then just working the rest of the hat. And well, I'm pretty sure you know how to make a bobble, but if you don't know, I can make a video on how to make a bobble, but you don't have to finish it off with a bobble. I just did because I love bobble hats. So this is kind of like a slouchy beanie hat, and it's sort of oversized, and I shall put a picture in of me wearing it so you can just see what it looks like from the back on my head. And yeah, I mean, I like this particular method because I make the brim separately to the rest of the hat, which means that you get the size that you want, and you know that you're working towards what you're working then towards the length that you want, because everyone's different, and everyone has a different head size. So yeah, I hope you find this video helpful, and I'll show you how I did it. So making this hat I used a chunky yarn, but it's an Aran weight yarns, which uses a 5mm hook, so it's sort of between the chunky and the sort of double knit yarn. So it's a nice feel, and it's not too heavy, but it crochets up nice and quick. So you know, it's up to you. Chunky yarns are probably best for these sort of hats, but you know, like I say, it's entirely up to you. But I'm going to be using a double knit yarn to show you how to make this hat. So it is a bit thinner, but this is just purely just to show you what I did. Okay, so we need to make the brim, and to make the brim, what we need to do is I'm going to make the brim separately to the rest of the hat. So these stitches here are going this way. So I work them this way to this way, this way to this way, and then these stitches just go around the top. Okay, so the first part we'll do is the brim, and the brim is entirely up to you, however wide or narrow you want that to be. Some people like them really wide, some people like them fairly narrow. I prefer sort of in between. So you know, this is why it's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to be showing you what I did, not how many stitches you need, because if you're using a chunky yarn, you're probably going to want to use fewer stitches than what I'm going to show you here. Okay, so I've put on here how many stitches: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That sounds about right. So to start this off, we need to make this ridge shape. Okay, can you see that nice ridge shape? So it looks like a rib knitted stitch, to be honest. So put on however many stitches you want. On this case I'm just doing 10, and into the third chain from the hook, so that's 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do a half treble. So remember, I'm British and I'm using British terminology, and if you don't know that there is a difference, I'll put a link down below for you to watch a video I've done, and I think there's a link in that video to a chart that I've shown on my blog, just showing the differences between the stitch names. They're all the same, but they just do have slightly different names. So then I'm going to continue doing half trebles all the way to the end. So there we go, that's my half trebles across there. In this case I've got 10, but like I say, it's entirely up to you how many you have. So the next row will be 2 chains, and we're going to turn, and then we're going to work the rest of the row apart from the last stitch with trebles, but we're going to be working them around the front of the post. So to do that, and I've done videos on how to do this before, but if you look at my basket weave video, I think I'll talk about it a lot more in depth, but I'll just show you quickly here. You're going to do a normal treble, so instead of putting it through this bit here like we would normally do, which is the top of the stitch, so instead of putting it through there, what we're going to do is we're going to work around the front of the post. So the hook comes down through the front and around like that, around the back and up through the front again, and you work the rest of the stitch. So that's working around the front post. If you were working around the back post, you would be putting the hook down and pushing it up from behind down again. Okay, so you're working the stitch from the front, so that's down through the front and up through the back, and finish off your treble. And what that does is it pushes the top of these stitches forward. Let me finish the row and I'll show you, and that gives you that ridged effect. So I'm just going to go all the way to the end doing the same. I've got 2 more stitches on the end there. So a last treble, and then I'm going to do a half treble into the top of that second chain that we did at the beginning. Okay, so we've done 1 row of half trebles, and then our trebles round the front post of the previous stitch, and I'm going to do 2 chains at the end, and I'm going to turn my work, and then you can see that nice ridged effect there, which gives you that sort of faux knitted look. I'll just get some more yarn. Excuse me. And then in this row we're just going to do half trebles all the way across. Okay, and then we're just going to repeat this second row. So I'll just show you one more time. So that's 2 chains, turn the work around, and then we're going to do a treble around the front post of the next 8 stitches, and into that last one there we're going to do a half treble again. And the reason we're doing half trebles at the end is because when you do a treble it would normally be much higher than the half treble, but because we're working it around the front post, it's not starting off here, it's starting off lower down, so it'll be the same height then. I hope you can see what I mean by that. So if I just do the half treble here around the front post like that, you can see that we're getting a nice sort of flat top to it, because that end stitch is, I've made it shorter to meet up with the height of the half treble, the treble being worked around the front post. And then just the half treble at the end. Sorry, I'm looking through my camera and I can't see what I'm doing. Here we go. Like that. So the back will be nice and flat, but when you turn it over you get this lovely ridged look. If I just hold it like that, you can see it's really sweet and it's really effective. So what you need to do is you need to keep going until you get a nice long strip like this one. And you, obviously I said I was going to make a smaller one for the video, but you would need to make this the same. So if you measure around your head, and if you remember the picture that I showed you at the beginning, if this is my head, then it sort of comes around the back, around the base of my neck and then up. So it's not like a normal hat where it just goes around the top of your head. You want a hat that's got that goes around like that. So over the, so this is like my face, so you've got your forehead and it comes down around the back of the base of your neck and then around. So that area, that length is going to be much longer than a hat that would just go around the top of your head. So measure that and then work your strip to be the same. Now if you're using a really chunky yarn, you're definitely not going to be using as many stitches as I've done here. So you know, this is why this is your turn, this is your chance to make this hat exactly how you want it to be. Okay, so when you've done your brim, you then just need to sew your 2 ends together and then we'll start working the rest of the hat. So to sew it together, I'm just taking the right side facing me, so that's the ridged side, that's the back side. So we want the face that's going to, the side that's going to be out facing. And we fold those 2 together just like we would be doing with sewing, and you sew the 2 facing sides together and then you turn it around afterwards, and that makes a nice seam there. So I'm just literally sewing these together. You could, oh, I forgot to mention, you need to finish on a treble row when you're doing this. So you just repeat those 2 rows, the half treble and then the treble, and finish on a treble row. And then you sew these together. And I advise you, if you're not 100% sure of the length of the hat that you're making, or the width of the hat, then when you're sewing this bit together, don't tie it off and sew the ends in. Do that at the very last. So don't, I personally now would tie these 2 ends together, which are the 2 ends that we've been working, which were left over from our working. So I'd tie those in a knot together and then I would sew these ends in. But if you're not sure that you've made the right width, then don't do that. Wait to the very end, because when you start crocheting it on, it will keep it together. It won't come apart, and then you can easily undo it if you need to. So there we go, that's the brim of the hat done, and we've sewn that together, and as you can see, that sort of join becomes part of the rest of the pattern, so it's fairly invisible. So we've got the brim made, and obviously maybe I'll make this for a doll. It's definitely not going to fit me or anyone I know. And what I've done is I've done a treble into the top of the band all the way around. And what I've done is I've tried to kind of look at what I've got available, and I've put 2 trebles basically into each gap that I can find. So the gap is the edge of the stitch, so into these gaps I've done 2 trebles. Now you may find that if you do 2 trebles into each one, it might become too warped. It depends on how slouchy you want it. If you want it to come out a lot more and then before it comes in, then that's fine. But if you want it to be sort of fairly straight and not too big, then just stick to sort of an even spaced number of stitches. You're going to join your yarn to your hook, and we're just going to find our place to start. Now I would tend to start where I had a seam before, so that we can keep us sort of all the seams at the back of the hat or in one place, so that you can adjust your hat so it's less visible. So I'm just going to join my yarn with a simple slip stitch, and then I'm just going to chain 3 to replace my first treble, and then into that same space I'm going to do another treble, and that's what I'm going to do all the way around. So into that space I'm just going to do 2 trebles, and I'm going to stop halfway through and see how I feel about it. If I feel that I've put too many stitches in, then I'll undo them, and I'll come back and I'll maybe do 2 and then 1. This is how it works with crochet. It's so versatile that you can just quickly undo things and then adjust them as you're going and make things suit how you need them to be for you or whoever you're making it for. So I'll just carry on doing that. Right, so I'm just going to be doing my last couple of trebles just there, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that 3rd chain from the start, and I'm going to have a look and see what we've got. Okay, so it's starting to look a bit like an ice cream cone now. So I've got that little bit of flare there, which is fine, because now we've got a platform to do whatever stitch you want, really. I chose to do just sort of grouped trebles together, which gives this sort of really nice pretty pattern, which I've shown in the baby hat video, which I'll put a link down below to. But this really is now your chance to do whatever stitch you want. And the reason I did trebles here is so that we can add length to the hat, because these slouchy hats, they are sort of supposed to be longer, so that they then create that slouch at the back. But if you were making just a normal hat and not such a slouchy hat, you could just measure this to go around the width of your head, and then you could maybe just do this in a double or a half treble. It's entirely up to you, but I'm trying to add length to this hat as we're going along. So like I said, I chose to use this sort of grouped trebles together, but you could do maybe a basket weave stitch, or whatever you want to do. It's really entirely up to you, but I'm going to continue showing you with this treble together. So I'm just going to show you the first row. So what I did, and I've shown you how to do these groups of trebles together before, but it is literally just 3 chains, and into that same space we're going to work a treble but stop at this point and not finish the stitch, and then I'm going to do another one into that same space and not finish the stitch, and then when I've got the number of trebles together that I want, I just do a 1 pull through all 3 of those stitches there, and then I'm going to chain 1. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. So I'm just going to skip 2 stitches here, so 2 trebles, and into that third one along I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to start working a treble, I'm going to leave the loops on the hook, I'm going to do another one, leaving the loops on the hook and not finishing it, and then one more, like that, and then I'm going to pull the yarn through all 3, well before there are 4 loops, and then I'm going to chain 1. So again 1, 2, and into that third one I'm going to do a treble but not finish it, another one, not finish it, and a third one, not finish it, and then pull my yarn all the way through all of those loops and then chain 1. And that's what I'm going to do all the way around, so I'll come back when I get around to the beginning. Okay, so I've gone all the way around now, and I'm just coming up to the last few stitches I need to do. So when you're working any stitch like this, where you're working around an edge and you have to skip a certain number of stitches and you don't know if it's going to work out all right at the end, well, you know, that happens a lot in crochet. And if you're doing something to make, you know, not to a pattern that somebody hasn't already worked out for you, it could be that you end up with too many stitches left over at the end, as in you've got, it hasn't happened in this case and I was expecting it to, but that's the way it goes, isn't it? You're always expecting something to happen, it never does. But what I was hoping I was going to show you is that when I got to the end, that whereas I'd said to miss 2 stitches and then work into the next one, what I was expecting to find is that I would only have 1 stitch left over. And what I wanted to demonstrate to you is that it's okay if that happens. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to undo all of your work. It doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because with this particular stitch, you're now going to start working in these gaps. So you don't need to worry about that sort of thing now, because there are only these gaps now to work in. But if you were going to working a pattern that works across a certain number of stitches, and you had to have that certain number specifically, what I was going to say is you can add in things or you can adjust things as you're going. So if I'd come to the end and found that I'd only had 1 there, that's fine. I still would have skipped those 2 stitches and put it into there, and I would have had a slightly different gap. And I think this actually happened when I was working this hat. So let me have a quick look. Yeah, see here I had 1 too many stitches left over, so I was skipping the 2, but here I actually had 3 left over. And honestly, if I hadn't pointed that out, would you have noticed? I don't think that you would have done. I notice it straight away, and you probably do now because I've pointed it out, but what I'm trying to say is no one else will notice it. So don't tell them that it's there like I just did, and they won't notice. So I'm just trying to say is, you know, I'm one for having everything in order and counted and properly done, and that is in my nature, but there's only so many times you can undo your project and restart it, and if that is going to stop you from, you know, working with the rest of your project, then please don't let it, because really it doesn't matter and no one is going to notice unless you tell them. So don't tell them. Okay, so you can easily add in stitches, you know, you can put 2 into 1, no one's going to notice. It just really isn't, people are not going to notice. They're going to think, wow, what a fantastic hat you've made, I'm jealous, I want one, make me one. That's what they're going to think, okay? So that's just my little bit of advice. So anyway, that didn't happen, so which is just typical. So 1, 2, and then into that one there. Oh, so typical, isn't it? Alright, and then I'll chain, and then I've got the 2 gaps there, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that stitch there, and that's that round done. So to work the rest, you're just going to slip stitch into that gap there, and then you're going to do exactly the same grouping all the way around. That's if you're going to use this style. So I'm not going to show you me going all the way around again. I'm just going to do a few rounds like this, and I'm going to come back when I want to start shaping the top of the hat, which is this bit here, because we are going to start bringing this in slightly. Now, not a lot, because this is a slouchy hat and we don't really want to bring it into a final point. So I'm just going to do a few rounds like this, and I'm going to come back and show you how I started reducing the stitches at the top here. Okay, so I've completed a few rounds now, and I'm not going to do too many more because this is obviously a smaller hat considerably. At the top here of this hat, what I did was I did a round of half trebles into the gaps that I could find. You can see that into the top of these stitches. So 2 chains, and then into that gap there I'm going to do a half treble, and into that top of that stitch a half treble. Now and into that gap there, sorry, I'm trying to explain things. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. Now the purpose of this point here is that we're going to try and taper in the hat a little bit. So if you're pulling in the stitches, you know, so like you might think that should have maybe 2 stitches there. That's fine. If you want to do that, you go ahead and do that. But my aim here is to bring in the hat, not sharply, but quite gently. So, you know, you do what you think is best for you. That there is a bit of a knot in the yarn. So this is just a sample, so I'm not too fussed. Yeah, so again, make this how you want it to be. If you want the hat to be really long and slouchy, then that's fine, you do that. I didn't want that to be for my case because I didn't, but this is your hat, you make it how you want it. So I'm literally just going round and doing these half trebles, and I think I started doing half trebles because I was worried that I wasn't going to have enough yarn. So if you wanted to do these as trebles, that's fine, but if you do the occasional sort of shorter stitch, it does give it more of a firm sort of direction. And again, if you want it to be really floppy, then I would go with the trebles, because that way it will be more slouchy. So I'm just going to go all the way around. So I'm just going to do my last stitch there, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that second chain there from the beginning. Okay, so that's brought that in a little bit, just the right amount that I wanted. And then what we're going to be doing, okay, so I've done that round there of half trebles, hope you can see there, and then here I've done a round of trebles into the top of each one of those stitches. So that's what I'm going to do now. So put my hook back in, chain 3, and then wherever I find the stitch, I'm just going to do a half treble, and that will add to the length of the hat, which is what we're looking for with a slouchy hat. So I shall come back when I've got round to the beginning again. So yeah, you're going to need a cup of tea or two while you're making this project. So I'm just doing my last stitch there, and then again going to slip stitch into the top of that third chain there to finish the round. Okay, so after I did that, what did I do? Okay, so after I did that round, I then started doing a round where I was reducing the stitches. So I was working 1 stitch across 2 stitches, and then 1 stitch into the top of one of the stitches. Right, so we're going to do 3 chains to replace our first treble, and this is going to be very similar to how I've previously shown you how to do these stitches, reducing them, and it's basically going to be a bit like this. So these together stitches, but only going to be doing 2. So I've done 1 treble, 1 treble equivalent, and then I'm going to put the hook in with the yarn over and work the first part of the treble, and I'm going to do it again to the next one along, and then I'm going to finish the stitch. So now that's reduced those 3 stitches to 2 because we've got 2 loops at the top. So again, I'm just going to do 1 treble into that next stitch along. So out of those 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, we now have 3. And again, I'm going to do the grouping together. So I'm going to start the stitch and not finish it, and then work into the next one and not finish it, and then finish it off. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches we've worked across, but we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches now to work into. So I hope you can see how that's reducing that. So the next one along will be just a normal treble, and then I'm going to reduce these two to 1 again. So that's yarn over, start the treble, not finish it, yarn over, start the next treble and not finish it, and then finish it. Okay, so the next one along will be the normal treble, and then we're going to work the next 2 into 1 remaining stitch, and we're just going to do that all the way around. Okay, so I've just got my last couple of stitches to do, and conveniently I've got 2 to work into, but if you didn't, then we'll just finish off with 1 or 2 together. It's, you know, like I said before, no one's going to notice unless you point it out to them. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that 3rd chain there, which was my first stitch, and I'll just take the hook out, and you can see now that that's tapered in nicely. I'm going to work the next round in exactly the same way. 3 chains for my first treble, and then I'm going to work that stitch and then that stitch along together. So I'm reducing it again, and then the next one will be just a treble, and then that stitch and that stitch will be together. And I think you're getting the idea, so I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. And here I am at the end, and like I said before, I was hoping to have 1 stitch left over, but I've actually got 2, so I'm just going to go ahead and join those 2 together. No one is going to notice, and I don't care. Okay, right, so now I'm going to finish off with a slip stitch there, and we'll have a look. And you can see again that has brought that in a lot. Okay, I'm going to actually finish this here. I'm going to leave that gap, so I'll just get my scissors and cut my yarn. Okay, so there we go, fasten that off. Now we've got a big hole at the top, and that's absolutely fine, because what we're going to do now is take that piece of yarn at the end, so don't cut it too short when you cut it off. Take a needle, thread your tail end, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to weave in and out of those top stitches there, like this, just a normal in and on, down and up stitch until we get round to the beginning. Which is here, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to pull that together like that. So I hope you saw that. I'll just do that again. So if I undo that, pull it out. So I've just done a running stitch all the way around the top of those stitches, and then we're just, once we've got round to the beginning, if you just pull it, it just pulls that up nicely into a hat shape. And then when you've done that, you can then just tie that off. If you can thread a needle, which obviously I can't. Like that. So keeping that tight, you're then just going to put some stitches through like that, just to keep it in place. Do a few, and then I'll just do a knot there, and I'll poke that yarn through the top, and I would weave my ends in on the inside. Okay, like that. So there we go, there's our hat. There's our hat finished, basically. If you don't want to put a bobble on the top, then that's fine, that's your hat finished. And I think that looks quite cute. It almost looks like a cupcake. Like I said, and I've showed you before, on this one I made a bobble and I just sewed that onto the top just to cover up that stitching, and I think that does finish off the hat quite nicely. And then on this hat that I've made here, I just went around and did a crab stitch around the edging, which I showed you in a previous video. I'll put a link down below to that, and just to finish off the hat, which I'm just going to do off camera and I'll come back. So there we go, that's my video on showing you how to make the Slouchy Beanie hat. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It's I've gained a hat out of it, so I enjoyed making it, and I'm sure I can find something to do with this little hat here. I'll probably put a little bobble on it. Yeah, just have to imagine that's the the bobble for that hat. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I would love a thumbs up if you found it helpful. I would love to see your hats that you make, or anything that you make, for following my videos. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me at Girlybunches. You can hashtag Girlybunches, and I'm sure I can pick that up. That's the same for Twitter. And yeah, just come and say hello to me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or just leave a comment down below if you have any questions. I always try and answer them as soon as I can. I do work full time, so forgive me if I don't answer them straight away. Maybe I'm probably more likely to answer at the weekends. But yeah, hit that subscribe button too if you haven't already done so, and you'll get to see my new videos that come out once a week. So yeah, I'll end this video now, it's been too long, and yeah, really hope you liked it and give me a thumbs up. Okay, thanks, bye!